Good morning, my beautiful Recovered on Purpose family. I am super excited about this message today on the Recovered on Purpose show, Monday Motivation. We're going to be talking about the importance of identity. And I've got some controversial things to talk about with our recovery community and our identities as we are in recovery. Love you guys so much. Enjoy the show and keep living Recovered on Purpose.
The black represents the darkness from which we came. The white represents the light in which we now live. And the red represents the passion it takes to live recovered on purpose.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Recovered on Purpose show, Monday Motivation. Again, we're going to be talking about identity, our identity in recovery, and how this can actually take us into and out of addiction. I've got some readings to do with you, and then I also brought a study that I want to show you guys the reality, the scientific evidence, how important this is for our internal dialogue of what we tell ourselves about our life in recovery and who we are as we go into our future in our lives, as well as not go back to the past that we have come from. So the first thing that I want to read, and guys, whether you are in a 12-step fellowship or not, this is a really important book for people like you and me, okay? And this message today, it sort of goes against a lot of people's beliefs about how they're supposed to identify in their recovery. But I want you to imagine this, okay? I want you to imagine the success rates that you have seen in fellowships today, and be open-minded to the ideas that we're going to talk about today. Be open-minded about this for your own life. And this doesn't mean we're going to start a big battle. This doesn't mean that we're going to go in and do this to tell everybody they're wrong. I'm talking about you listening to this right now and how you speak to yourself in your recovery and how you identify, okay? So the first reading is going to be the intro to the doctor's opinion in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous on page XXV. We of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the reader will be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery described in this book. So this is a medical estimate. A doctor, right, is talking about this. And it's a plan of recovery, okay? Convincing testimony must surely come from medical men who have had experience with the sufferings of our members and have witnessed our return to health. Our return to health. That means that we were sick, and then now we are healthy. We're healthy now. We were sick. And I want you to imagine this. Imagine you have a flu, all right? And the way that you're talking about it, you might say that I have the flu, and then when the symptoms start to go away, you say I'm recovering from the flu. And what that means is that you're not at 100% health yet. I'm recovering from a flu. I'm still having some symptoms, but they're going away. They're subsiding more and more each day. That's when you say you're recovering. The next thing, the foreword to the first edition. We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. So as we're talking about this identity, when we're calling ourselves a recovering addict, somebody that is recovering, I understand that you believe that you are an addict for your entire life. I get that. I get that I can't put substances into my body or else the phenomenon of craving will start again and I will get to a place where I can't control my life anymore. I understand that. But I'm no longer waking up in the morning needing dope. I'm no longer waking up in the morning thinking about how I'm going to find this dope, what I'm going to have to do in order to get dope. That's not in my thought process anymore. And that's what the sickness is. When we're stuck in addiction, that means that we are uncontrollably using drugs and or alcohol in order to live life. There's nothing we can do about it. We're using against our will. When we have done a program, it doesn't necessarily have to be the 12 steps. It can be whatever program you've done to where your mind is not thinking uncontrolled in order to go use drugs. You have recovered, and it is okay to recover from this thing. Recover from this thing and go into life ready for whatever you want. Everything that you desire is yours now in your recovery. There is nothing holding you back anymore. The addiction from our past doesn't have to be the way that our mind thinks into our future. All right. And the next thing, I have a study from the National Library of Medicine. Okay. So this is a, you know, National Library of Medicine. This is a legitimate study done on people like you and me. Okay. And I have a few, it's long, and feel free to look up social identities as pathways into and out of addiction. Social identities as pathways into and out of addiction. So our identity, the identity that we tell ourselves that we are, the thing that we take on and believe is super, super important for us to be able to get out of addiction. And it's something that also caused us to go into our addiction. Okay. So this is the abstract. I'm going to read a small part of it for you. However, a distinct identity gain pathway emerged for socially isolated individuals who described the onset of their addiction in terms of a new valued social identity. Almost all participants described their TC, their treatment center experience, in terms of belonging to a recovery community. Participants on the identity loss pathway aim to renew their pre-addiction identities after treatment, while those on the identity gain pathway aim to build aspirational new identities involving study, work, or family roles. So when we're talking about the renewed identities, that means something that we had before our addiction that our addiction stole from us, right? Maybe you were an athlete before addiction. Maybe you were, maybe you used to do sewing before addiction and you lost it because you were addicted. That identity, when we want to renew that identity, we can bring that into our recovery. We are an athlete. We play basketball, I play football on the weekends. I'm a paddle tennis player. That kind of stuff is powerful to identify as in our recovery, because all of that stuff was taken from us with the identity of I am an addict. The identity I am an addict takes over every other identity that we have. We don't have to call ourselves that identity anymore. You will hear me say, I'm a recovered addict. I'm a recovered alcoholic. And the reason for that is that I am well aware that I have this disease. I'm well aware of that. I can't go drink maybe a beer or two. I can't smoke just a little bit of crack. That doesn't work for someone like me. However, I have recovered from the seemingly hopeless state of mind, body, and spirit to where I wake up in the morning and I have to use dope. I wake up in the morning and I'm thinking about it. If you have recovered from that, you have the opportunity in your recovery to take on roles and identities in your life that empower you and that strengthen you to move into your life and the dreams that you want in your life. You are 100% capable. You are 100% able, and God's got your back now. God has your back in your recovery. Most people will never understand what it's like to rely on God for life. And when we find recovery and we relied on Him to find recovery, we can bring that power into every identity that we have in our recovery. God, I'm a child of God. I'm a child of God. I bring the power of God into when I play paddle tennis. I bring the power of God into being a podcast host. I bring the power of God into being a podcast guest. These types of identities, what you want with your life, are super, super powerful. And if the identity of I am an addict was stealing things from you in your addiction, why would we bring that identity into our recovery? Okay. Now I'm going to keep going. There's some really cool stuff down here at the bottom. And obviously, guys, feel free to read this. I read this and it's super, super interesting how they did this. And it's exactly what, I talk about this stuff. I talk about this stuff with you, how important it is to internally describe who we are in order to live the life that we want to live. We have to be willing to change our minds and have open minds in recovery in order to achieve our dreams, in order to follow our dreams and not go backwards. That's the whole point of recovery. There is no perfection in recovery. It's a continual process of progress. Recovery is a continual process of progress. And as we're progressing in our life, that means that we're taking on new identities. That means we're finding things that we love. We're finding things that we want to do, and we're taking on that identity and we're doing it. You don't have to be, I am someone that runs in the morning. I run in the morning. And that's not as powerful as telling yourself, I am a runner. I'm a runner. I run because I am a runner. If we're saying the action that we're doing without including an identity within ourselves, then it's not going to cause us to take the same kind of action that a true believing identity will. So what is it that you want in your life? What do you want in your life? What do you want for your life in recovery? And there's some really good examples here. So two main identity-related pathways into addiction emerged in participants' descriptions, their life experiences before they became addicted. In the first pathway, participants held positive social identities prior to addiction and felt that these were lost as a result of or alongside of their increasing engagement in substance use and the activities related to obtaining substances. So we become, as we might have had this total identity in our early life, right? I was the home run derby hitter at the Little League World Series. I was a straight A student. I was the captain of the football team. I was all of these things. But while my addiction progressed and while I continued to do things that a captain of a football team wouldn't do, when I continued to do more and more things that, the captain of the wrestling team wouldn't do, I started to lose that identity more and more and more, because that person that's leading people in a team wouldn't be sneaking off and hiding the fact that he's using drugs all the time. He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't be hiding things from his coaches and hiding things from his teammates in order to do drugs. That's something an addict has to do. I'm not that person anymore. In contrast, in the second pathway, participants describe negative early life experiences and profound social isolation due to a lack of positive social connections and identities. So this is talking about if you were someone who grew up in a hard childhood, if you grew up and your parents were abusive, or you didn't have a lot of, maybe you were neglected, these types of things, you didn't necessarily have that positive affirming identity as a kid, right? And that's okay. Where you're at right now is you're not there anymore. You are not there anymore. Okay. For this group, the development of an addiction brought with it a new valued identity as a substance user, along with a sense of belonging and acceptance within a substance using social network. So have any of you, do any of you understand this? Where you felt accepted when you were using drugs with other people, for a while at least. You had friends that you used drugs with. You had friends that you drank with. And that social network became your identity. It became, something that drove you. It became something that, made it so that, okay, it's okay. I'm just using drugs. I'm getting high and I'm making friends. I have this identity as someone who uses drugs. That's okay. And then it became a place where, we started losing those friends even. And we started losing that social network. But we kept that identity as a drug user, as an addict. We kept that identity after we were even losing those social networks. And for this group, the major themes as represented in the thematic map in figure 1, we describe the major themes along with quotations from the interviews below. So this is saying, if we had positive identities in the transitions of life while we were addicted, we started to take on a negative identity. Okay. And if you were, socially isolated, you were neglected, you had a hard childhood, you gained a user identity. You gained someone that was an addict. You gained someone, that had a social network of friends that you were able to use with. But the thing is these both have to go to the recovery identity. I'm someone that's in recovery. I can't do that life anymore. I'm recovering now. I'm working on myself. I'm not going to use drugs anymore. I'm not going to drink anymore. And we start here at this recovery identity. Then there's two pathways to go from here. There's two pathways. And for some of us, we have identities from pre-addiction, you know, athlete or someone who studies, someone who's smart, someone, these identities we had before our addiction, and we want to renew positive identities. Okay? Things that you lost because of your addiction that you want to regain in your recovery. I am a runner. I am a writer. I am a reader. Any of these things that you used to do that you want to bring back into your life in recovery are amazing. If you want to bring them back, bring them back. Someone in the course right now, it used to be a hula hooper, and she is taking on that identity again. And she's doing a whole hula hooping course for the recovery community because she is a hula hooper. That is her identity. And whatever it is for you, it doesn't have to be reading or writing or hula hooping. It can be whatever identity you had that you lost that you want back. That's what a positive, renewed identity is. Then aspirational identities. Aspirational identities go for both sets of people. This means whether you had positive identities before addiction or you had a hard time in your early childhood. Aspirational identities are things that you desire in your life that you've never had before, things that you want to do, things that you dream about doing. You take on the identity of someone that is an addictions counselor. I'm an addictions counselor. I'm an addictions counselor in training. You take on this identity. And if you take on this identity that you're an addictions counselor, that is a powerful, powerful, powerful internal state to have to not use drugs. Because if you're taking on an identity as an addictions counselor rather than an addict, you are helping addicts rather than being one. So when you are taking on that identity, it causes you to act differently. And that's the point of an identity. When you take on the identity, it causes you to act differently. So I want you to think about these for yourself. I want you to think about, what are your positive renewed identities that you might want from your past before addiction? And what are aspirational identities that you have? What are dreams that you have in your life? What are things that you want in your life? What are you really driven by in order to go at life in recovery? We can't take on the identity of addict for the rest of our life. We can take on recovered. We can take on having a past of addiction. But if we keep telling ourselves that we're an addict, we're going to act like an addict, period. Period. I'm going to hop in the comments and say, what's up? I love your slogan. Recovered on purpose is exactly what you're explaining. The way you speak to yourself is more important than what you realize. 100%, Ryan. Good to see you, brother. I know exactly what you're saying. Good, brother. Good, brother. Kylie, this is so important. Thank you for this. My internal dialogue tries to hold me back with every new achievement. Finally working again, making honest money. I'm growing every day. I don't need to identify as that person anymore. I need to stop putting myself in that box. So I definitely needed to hear this. Love you, Kylie. I'm super, super glad that you're here. And guys, take it. Write down some identities that you desire in your life, some aspirations that you have in your life in recovery, and think about things that would be powerful for you. Some more in this article, like some really powerful ones. I'm a good parent. That's a really powerful identity to hold and be true to, because being a good parent causes you to act like a good parent. When you believe in yourself as being a good parent, you're not going to drive to the dope house with your 3-year-old in the back. You're not going to do that. You don't have time for that. You're being a good parent. You're not going to be someone that sits around and does nothing because you're a good parent. You want to show your kid what life is about. That is what you're called to do. You're called to have every positive thing in abundance in your life. That is what you are called to and what you are capable of having in your recovery. I love you guys. Love you guys so much. What's up, brother? Good to see you. Congratulations on your NGO. Abdullah just started a basically a nonprofit organization, and he is like 25 of them right now on a board that are going out and helping addicts. So give it up for Abdullah. Super, super proud of you, brother. Super proud of you. This is really good. I'm still caught up on beating myself up. I get it, Jennifer. I get it. And there's it takes work. I'm not pretending like this doesn't take work. I had to do a lot of work around myself to release the past. I've done like 4 or 5 fourth and fifth steps in my recovery. And that's just because it's a really good practice for people like you and me. There's other personal development work to do, there's other videos to watch. You know, you can YouTube search, how do I stop mentally beating myself up? And there's going to be a ton of information on there that you can listen to and apply. And it's really, really powerful to start studying. How do I figure this out? How do I start believing in myself? How do I get a new identity in my life? And it's super, super powerful. So I love you guys so much. Thank you for being here. I'm glad that you guys were getting some value. Having a wonderful, wonderful week. Find that identity you want and live it. And keep living